Hi everyone, this is my vocabulary task presentation. First, I just wanted to give you a little bit of context. I am a high school ESL teacher at a Title I school in Phoenix. My school has a large and diverse ELL population. I think there are 42 different languages spoken amongst my students in their homes, which is awesome. The class I chose to implement a strategy in is called Conversational English and Academic Vocabulary. This course teaches content area vocabulary because ESL students in Arizona usually don't take those classes until they're considered proficient in English. I thought this was the perfect class to try out a new vocabulary strategy in because I'm constantly throwing academic words at them and trying to get them to understand. I wanted a strategy that would help introduce a new unit about the environment and also address two big needs of my students. The first need is to build upon their prior knowledge. Chapter 2 discusses the importance of inspiring students to become readers, saying that we should draw on their experiences and frame them within the context of our academic world. The second need I saw was to allow students to make connections in their first language. Arizona has an English immersion policy, which sometimes makes it difficult for students to feel encouraged to develop literacy in their first language. So ultimately, I chose to implement a strategy from Chapter 5 called Word Splash. Basically, students are given a piece of paper and a word, and then they write or draw what comes to mind when they see or hear the word. This strategy addressed the needs I mentioned, and I could see how this would be appropriate for all of my students, regardless of their English proficiency level. Our new unit was going to be about the environment, so I only gave students the word environment and the definition. I allowed students to translate the word into their language prior to starting, so let's see what they did. Something I really enjoyed about this strategy is that my students all interpreted it in different ways. Some of my students only drew pictures, some used mostly their native language, others used a combination of their languages, some wrote more words, some drew more pictures. As you can see, they're all very different. Overall, I was really impressed with what they constructed. I think it gave them the opportunity to be creative and use their native language. I thought the activity was also an appropriate struggle. It required some critical thinking, but it was feasible for all students since it wasn't really restricted by rules. Chapter 7 states that vocabulary should not be taught in isolation, but rather in integration. This word splash activity helps students build their background knowledge first. Then I taught the word explicitly, and then we began exploring it in the context of texts about recycling and pollution and other environmental issues. The ultimate outcome is for students to construct meaning based on their own experiences. In Chapter 6, the authors state, "The ultimate goal is to watch the text come to life as the words on the page speak to them, connecting to and richly informing their lives and experiences." I thought this vocabulary strategy was a step toward accomplishing this goal. But there are some things that I would change when I implement this in the future. I would want to set a more strict time limit for this activity. This was obviously something new for my students, but it ended up taking multiple class periods to complete, which isn't necessarily a bad thing, especially because it is something new for them. But I do think that providing them with one class period in the future would be enough time since they are already familiar with it. I would also want to take a few minutes to wrap up the activity and do a closure so that everyone is on the same page. So I envision maybe teaching the word environment at the end or showing them my own example of a word splash just to get some ideas flowing and open up the next page for where we're moving towards. Lastly, this activity could easily be extended into something like a gallery walk so that students could see their peers' creations and then further understand that there isn't just one way to do it and what everybody did is okay. This activity is definitely something I will use in the future, especially to introduce the big academic vocabulary concepts that they'll be exposed to.